All right, we're back. I'm trying this. This is my second time I logged in for this. So as I was saying a few minutes ago before I jumped offline, I got back online. I'm going to French polish this pie crust table that I have today. I took the finish off. This table is just about sold, but I was telling my client that I was going to put a new finish on it because the top just looked a little wore out. So I'm going to do that here live today. I'm going to put a finish on this nice little 18th century pie crust table. It's a tilt top, really nice mahogany table. The top just had some wear and it had a lot of years of wax on it. It didn't look that great. So I'm gonna redo it right now and walk you guys through the process so you see sort of how this works. So I'm gonna put a fresh finish on this table this morning. It won't take very long. This is no longer more than an hour process to get this table finished. It's Honduran mahogany, nice table. I'll walk you guys through how I would do this table, or how I'm gonna do this table, I should say rather. I'm a little far from my phone, so I can't read your comments, but if you see or have a question or say something you want to bring up, just DM me, and I'll read through the comments later, and I'll say this. So this table, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my rags. I'm going to actually, I wasn't going to stain this, but I just put some wax on it because I want to grain fill it. However, I recognize, let me grab some rags. I guess I can use this rag. I'm going to grab some rags really quick. All right, I'm back. So what I was going to do with this table, anytime you're putting a fresh finish on a table, you have to seal the grain of it, which, you know, most wood has a grain that's open, and if you're putting a French polish finish on, you want to seal that grain, otherwise it just doesn't look right. It's kind of got dimples and all sorts of stuff. Doesn't look very good. But this one, and I exclusively use, like again, shout out to Gil Boys. Simon, how you doing, buddy? I use the Gil Boys Waxer here on Instagram. They're over in the UK. And they make these really nice products, these antique waxes. They're really, really nice. So I use these almost exclusively. This one in particular is antique gold. Mahogany, however, has a reddish tint to it, and I kind of want to avoid the red tint. So I'm going to use a lemon yellow stain on this. I don't always stain furniture, but sometimes I will, just to get a color look. This is a Mohawk product. This is a penetrating NGR dye to stain. This is lemon yellow. So I'm just going to put some stain on this guy to sort of get a golden undertone. It's kind of what I want to do. And mahogany is, like I said, just by nature, it's sort of a reddish color. So it helps to put some kind of stain on here to sort of try to keep the tones from going too red. You don't want a really high red. Now, there's another way to do this with mahogany. You could also bleach it. But it's overcast here in Nashville today, and I honestly don't feel like waiting for the bleach to do its thing. So I'm just going to wipe this stain on here first. And a project like this is really easy to tackle for like the layperson who doesn't do a lot of furniture stuff. Small tables are really great projects. And these are particular types of tables are really practical. They're great for setting pictures up on, books, pottery, plants. You can use them as tea tables. It's, I think, primarily what they're really for. All right, so once I get my stain on there, which I'm on there, put this away. Then I'll just give this a second. This stuff is alcohol based, so it dries really, really quickly. Let's see, yesterday was Wine Down Wednesday. I went down, had a lot of wine last night. Had a good time in my building. Hung out with all my friends, except Ryan. He's up in DC right now. What's up, buddy? I know you're out there somewhere. I don't know if you went to Spider Kelly's or not. Jess was down last night at Wine Down Wednesday, as was pretty much the whole crowd at the 505 in Nashville. All right, so now I'm gonna take some of this wax, and all I'm doing with this is just putting on a light coat. I'm not trying to put a whole finish on this. So I'm just gonna make sure I get up into all the cracks and just rub some wax on this table. And like I said, the purpose of this is just to really kind of just seal the grain and give myself a nice surface to work on for my lacquers. Now, some people would do even just a wax finish. You could do that if you wanted. I don't personally think that's quite enough. So I like to put on lacquer as well. And the wax finish, you can buff it up and get a nice shine, but lacquer, like a French polish lacquer, is always going to be a little bit nicer than a wax finish, in my personal opinion. Of course, that is subjective. You guys can do it however you like, and everybody sort of has their preferences, I suppose, especially when it comes to antique collectors and dealers. Some like the wax look. I'm a little bit more fond of lacquer personally. And the only thing that's really important with this step, honestly, is just to try to be uniform with it so that you have even coverage. It may not look apparent right off the bat, but once you go to put a polish on, if you didn't get full coverage of your grain fill, it'll sort of become obvious. And this table, I'm gonna have to actually tighten it up once I get this done too. These tilt top tables get really wobbly over use because the way they're mounted on a single pedestal, there's a lock mechanism down here on the bottom. You can see this whole thing will hinge upward like this. And this pedestal is just mounted with two tenons rather through a mortise joint, and then it has a locking brass pin. So it has basically two vectors of where it can come loose through the hardware and then also through the tenon pins that lock it into place onto the pedestal. It's an easy fix to tighten them up, but they do get a little bit wobbly over use, which is normal. Totally normal for this type of table. All right. And so this wax, doesn't take very long for this wax to dry. Just a few moments really. And I'm just gonna, all right. Okay, so that's the wax process, and I'm gonna let that sit for just a second, and then once it dries, I'm gonna steel wool it down and before we start putting lacquers on here. This table I can see has a little tiny cigarette burn here on the edge. It looks like somebody at some point was smoking on it, put their cigarette down. It's minor, it adds a little bit of character. Other than that, this table's pretty good. It consists of, looks like 3 separate pieces of mahogany. You got one here, one plank here, and another one jointed in on the end. And this nice scalloped pie crust edge. All right, let's take this down now. So now I'm using Forge Zero Steel Wool, just a piece of steel wool, nothing fancy here. And I'm just gonna wipe this down and knock down the high spots and try to put that wax. You can see it'll bunch up on here, piece of steel wool there. It's cold here in Nashville today. It's down in the 50s. I mean, I shouldn't say cold, it cooled off, I should say. The weather here's been, it's like Jekyll and Hyde weather. It's like spring, summer. The last weekend it was 74 here in the city and we were all at the pool. Today it's in the 50s. Okay. And once you get this cleaned off, once I get this cleaned off, I'll just give that another moment to do its thing and then we'll start putting some lacquer on here. And I probably ought to wipe these edges off a little bit better. Okay. I wish I had grabbed another rag because I could use this one. And so today I'm going to be using Lubricite, which is a lacquer finish that is available. Here it is, the original Lubricite 77. This is out of New Jersey. The ladies that run this company are really super nice. And this was their grandfather's recipe. And I think they used to do, I guess, chemical and finish manufacturing, but they've gotten out of most of the business, but they're still keeping this brand alive just for the namesake of it, which I think is admirable. And it's a good product. If you are in the market for some pre-made lacquer, padding lacquer, I can highly recommend them. I assume it's probably like Lubricite77.com or something to that effect. All right. But that's the finish we're gonna put on here today. All right, so far, this is the surface we got, and all I've done is a bit of stain and 1 coat of Gilboy's wax. And it already looks pretty nice. I mean, honestly, you could almost just let it go like that. But we're gonna do a little bit more than that, aren't we? Boys and girls. I watched Mr. Rogers too much growing up. All right. And so, like I said, if you were somebody that just wants, you know, sort of this antique look, you could even get away with just leaving wax on it. And you can polish over wax, you can wax over polish. It doesn't really matter which way you do this. You can go either way. All right, so the trick here is we use cloth diapers. They're lint-free. You want to make a small ball in your hand like this. I discuss all this in my French polishing workshop, by the way. If you guys are interested, you can send me a DM. I do workshops where I'll ship you all the materials and train you on how to do this skill yourself. If you're interested in it, There's reasons for everything that I'm doing here. Those of you who have taken my course know exactly what's going on here. All right, and then so we just start on one side of the table and we start applying lacquer in small, even coats. And I just keep on going, I don't stop evenly. It doesn't look like we're doing much here, but it takes a few minutes to sort of build. These coats of lacquer are thin coats of shellac lacquer, same thing. And those of you who are unfamiliar, that comes from the lilac beetle out of India. That's where all shellac comes from. It's a beetle resin that is the natural product out of India. So all of the lacquer in the world comes from India. At least the shellac does, the flake, which is interesting. All right, so I've done one small pass here of lacquer. We haven't really built this up yet, so we don't have a high sheen on this yet. We're just slowly putting on a finish, boys and girls. Slowly. All right, and then I just repeat the process all over again. And the longer you do this, the easier it becomes. I know for some of my students that went through this course, they were having issues with it getting sticky. A lot of this has to do with knowing the viscosity you have of fluid, the pressure that you're using, the speed, all of that sort of comes into place. And then as the lacquer finish builds on the surface, it's sort of, you can sort of work it, and there's a lot of pressure that you can feel sort of in your rag, and you'll kind of know how to work it. You can't see my phone, it's kind of far, so I don't see that I see there's several of you guys logged in watching. So anyway, so I'm gonna do this again. This is the third pass now. Putting lacquer on the surface over top of this waxed and stained Honduran mahogany tabletop. And so this is an old method of refinishing a table that anybody can do at home. It's not complicated, it's not hard, it doesn't require expensive materials, tools. All the supplies here to do this table could be purchased for probably less than $100. All right, so I just gave that a moment to dry. And when I'm looking at these tables, I'm looking across the finish, like I'm looking at the light that's cascading off the top of the surface of the table, and sort of seeing my progress I go. And the trick a lot of the times with these lacquers is you gotta just allow them time to dry down, because it's like working with nail polish. You know, it's a sticky substance, and if you try to overwork it, you just kind of create a mess for yourself if you're not careful. So it's better to sort of go slow, work slow, let the things dry. It's good to have a drink of your coffee or tea in the meantime. For those of you who knew my back was messed up, or my hip rather, it's feeling pretty good. Last night was my best night of sleep so far. It's been, I think, 11 days now since I injured myself, and I'm getting around a lot better, so that's positive. When you're in the midst of a bad injury, you get a little concerned that it's going to be a long-lasting thing, so I'm so grateful. I've prayed the entire week to feel better, and I'm feeling much better. All right, so here we go again. We're going to do, this is now my fourth pass, and on this one, I'll lay down a little bit more lacquer, and in a second here, I'm going to start to buff this lacquer out by going in circles. I just want to make sure I got a nice even distribution of lacquer on the surface before I get into that step. All right. And I've been doing finishes this way, golly, since I was a kid. I'm just about 30 years, 29 years, I think, almost 30 years. This coming spring, I think, will be, or summer rather, will be my 30th year of doing this. So I've been doing this exact same finish method for thousands of tables. Piece of furniture, it served me well, it works well. I've tweaked it over the years, it's sort of how I do it. Just a little here, a little there, as far as like adjustments of what kind of lacquers I use and sort of what steps and processes I take. But basically, I've been doing this exact same way for the majority of my career. And it's been a long career. I've restored some Lots of furniture for a lot of people. A lot of famous names, a lot of politicians, a lot of important buildings, very expensive pieces of furniture. I think the most expensive piece of furniture I ever worked on was a $270,000 cabinet for one of my clients back in DC. It was on Capitol Hill. Really nice cabinet too. But I used to maintain that cabinet for him. It's a fun job. All right, so I can see now it's starting to dry. I look across this, I can see some streaks and stuff. So all these things, I just let it dry for a second, and then these will kind of flip this around. So it's a little bit better. I can hinge this up this way. There we go. That works better. So if you look across this, you can see there's some streaks, and it hasn't buffed any of this out yet. And I'm not going to put a heavy finish on this. I don't think it requires that. I just wanted to get rid of some of the scratches. The finish that was on here had been chipped and scratched in a couple places, and it just looked a little worn. A lot like antique dealer furniture. You know, if you shop a lot of antiques, you'll see a lot of finishes are kind of worn off, and some people like that look. Some people like sort of the worn look, and I know it's a problem for antique dealers all the time trying to clean and touch up their furniture so it looks good as it goes out the door, because the last thing you want to do is, you know, put a nice price tag on a piece of furniture that doesn't look as good as it could. Now they are antiques, they do have wear, and that's some of the character of them, but some of it is stuff that should be addressed. It's almost like classic cars. You wouldn't sell a classic car that's got a cracked windshield, you know what I mean? So you also want to sort of maintain the finishes on some of these antiques, even though they are antiques and you don't want to modify them necessarily too much, but you should at least maintain the finishes so that they look good and that they last another 100, 200 years. Because nobody in your family is going to want to inherit your beat up furniture. So if you plan on passing your invested furniture down to your family, you want to maintain it so that it's in good condition and it maintains its value and all that stuff. All right. So this looks pretty good. At this point, what I'm going to do is start doing some circle polishing, circle padding, whatever you want to call it. And basically what I'm doing now is I'm going to buff out some of the streaks and lines in this and deposit a little bit more finish into this. And this is the step that you can really screw it up if you're not careful. You can start creating streaks and problems for yourself, especially if you're polishing over wax. If you're starting with raw wood, it's a little different, but if you're polishing over wax, you got to be really gentle with this when you get started. So I'm applying very, very little pressure. The trick here is not to stop on the surface or let your rag sort of like create a problem for you. So you really gently and lightly want to just start laying out lacquer in circle movements, and you'll sort of speed up as you go and make your circles smaller as you go. And until you establish a nice sort of unified surface here, you don't want to push very hard because you will burn your finish. And when I say burn it, I mean more like you'll mar it, you'll streak it, drag it, put a smudge in it basically. And you don't want to do that, because that's going to be a problem that you're going to have to sort through. And so I was kind of bummed out last night. I was trying to go see a punk concert here in town in Nashville, and tickets were sold out. I should have got tickets sooner, but I had the injury. It was the Descendants were playing. I don't know if you guys, that 80s California punk rock stuff. Circle Jerks and Descendants played in Nashville, Brooklyn Bowl, but I missed it. I did get to hang out with friends. And then normally when I do something like this, I'm gonna move the table around, or walk around the table rather, just so I can see it from lots of different angles, so I can sort of look at my surface and see what I'm working on. And I'm just gonna keep doing this circle pad movement. And I will look across the surface and try to find all my problem areas where the finish isn't building, and I'll just slowly work them into this. And you got to be really patient when it comes to doing this French polishing stuff. It's not a process that you want to rush. It's pretty simple, but you do have to be patient with it. It's not something that you can rush through really quickly. It doesn't take very long, but you still don't want to rush it. You just want to go slow. Just like this, nice and easy, slow. Keep scooting the table around so you can see what you're doing. so far this looks pretty good. This is a nice table too. I really like the legs on this one. It's got spade feet, which are really kind of nice. A lot of these will come with that claw on ball foot, which I feel like that was a really popular thing, but unless they're really, really nicely carved claws, I'm not too hip on it. I like spade feet a little better. All right. So what I'm doing now is just gently rubbing some of these swirls out of here and back and forth. And the idea overall here is that we're just slowly building a finish. And I can see this area right here is a little splotchy. And the rest of this looks really good so far. So if you're doing this and you run into problem spots, the best thing to do for problem spots is just leave them alone for a few minutes and let them dry. Because if they start to get blotchy, it's usually because you've got too much lacquer on there. And it's best to sort of just go slow and let it dry for a moment. If you have to, you can steel wool it back down flat and kind of start over. But if you're just patient and let it dry, it'll usually sort itself out. So I'm going to be in High Point Market on Tuesday. I think our opening day at Chelsea's on Tuesday. I'm heading out on Monday. Today's Thursday, so I got a couple days here in the gallery. I've got a dining table right here. I'm going to do this same process to my dining table here in a second. I'm working on that today. And then I've got that big Dutch cabinet. For those of you who are curious, I did a total of about 40 hours on that cabinet. I'm installing it to the client's house today. And I will probably get more videos and post a reel of all the work I did on it. I'll boil 40 hours down to 30 seconds for a reel. How about that? But it was a lot of work. That piece had a lot of veneer issues, a lot of structural issues that had to be addressed. Just lots of issues. It was a big job. And I didn't charge near what I probably should have charged. I did get a nice price for it, and I was happy to do that. But some of these restoration projects, if I charged per hour, it just would be unattainable for most people, even for the work I did, which was a lot of money. But it was 40 hours worth of work. So, but it's a labor of love. I don't do this stuff to get rich. Not the actual work. All the other stuff, yes. All right. So this looks pretty good. I'm just gonna let this dry for just a moment. I can tell it's just a little wet, needs to dry. I'm gonna do one more pass here. I'm gonna let this dry for about 5 minutes. And then after that, I'm gonna come back and circle polish it out one more time, and that should get the majority of all the little spots covered. And when you're doing this back and forth, it seems like it should be obvious, but you're always going with the grain. You're not going directly across the grain. You're going the length of the grain. If that's not obvious to you, that's what you got to do. At least for your final passes, you can go across the grain, obviously in that circle motion, but your final pass, you always want to have it run along with the grain. It'll look better if you do it that way. All right. And this is a good first coat. Now with French polishing, you can come back and work it multiple days in a row. It doesn't have to be done on one day. You could let this dry and come back and do this again on another day if you wanted. All right. So I'll tilt this up and show you guys what we got here. I think this looks pretty good for how long have we been live here? We've been live for like maybe 10 minutes tops, 15 minutes at the most, I think. Something like that. Not very long. So it didn't take very long. And to sand this table off took me, I don't know, 15 minutes. All right, let's tilt this up, show you guys what we got going on here. Okay, see if we can get some looks in this. So there you go. That's about 10-15 minute French polish job. You can see the lights reflecting in the surface of the table, the chandelier overhead there. And this needs to dry before I fool with it too much more, because like I said, you don't want to overwork these things. So that's pretty much that process. Here we go. Let me jump this up and I'll talk to you guys. So in any of that, how you guys doing? So that's how you do a finish on a table traditionally. And like I said, I teach these courses, so if you guys are interested, just send me a DM. Thank you, I appreciate the compliment, Ellie. So I teach this finishing method. If you guys are interested, like I said, you can go to my website, clearandco.com, and I'll send you out a kit if you're interested. I take Venmo and all that stuff. It takes about an hour to do the class, walk you through, and I'll ship you guys all the supplies if you're interested in learning how to do this. It is a very useful skill if you have anything to do with furniture in your career, you know, whether it's your vintage dealer or something like that. But it's a great way to dress up your furniture if it's got wear and tear. And I've got this bigger table here I'm working on later today, this pedestal table, and it's got 2 leaves. I'll be doing that one later, but I got to get my deliveries for this afternoon prepped. And I just got in here, and I'm pretty sure this table's sold, this little pie crust table. But I wanted to clean up the top before I send it out the door. I don't like to send out my antiques looking shabby. Not a good way to do it. Anyway, well, listen, that's it. If you guys endured through that, I appreciate you. I hope you have a fantastic Thursday. And if you have any questions, just shoot me a DM, and I'll be seeing you guys later. Have a great afternoon.